Welcome to the Hustler's Manifesto podcast. We jailbreak from toxic hustle culture. We take Hustler back from the belief that bigger is better, security is contingent on compliance, and freedom is reserved for the powerful. I'm your host, Sarah Duran. I'm not here to tell you how to make a quick buck. I'm here to change the way work is done so we can live more meaningful lives right now instead of betting on an uncertain future. If you value this content, please rate it and comment on this podcast wherever you get it. Thanks for being part of the movement. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Sarah.
How are you?
Perfect. Thanks for asking. I'm in the middle of after summer season, which is a busy time for freelancers. So we organize a lot of stuff and lots of things going around in our freelance community, actually, and in my personal business as well. I have clients who are heading into pre-Christmas season, right? So we deal with stuff. Very busy, and I like it.
That's awesome.
I'm sort of I'm really energetic person. I really like things moving, and no matter if I work for client or for something related to our freelance community, I always try to have my best energy that day and do my best work. So yeah, September is awesome. I just had a minor injury with my leg playing tennis, so I was chair bound for a while, 10 days, suffered. But now it's getting better, so I start moving again.
That's good. I totally resonate with the after summer period. Most of my clients work in education, and so the fall is an extremely busy time for my work because everything starts ramping up. Everyone goes back to school, both the universities I work for and then the K-12 schools that we work with. And so it is also a busy time for me, and I am on the tail end of a cold. So I've also been sort of laid out for about a week, and I'm I need my energy level to come back up because it is so busy right now that I need all the energy I can get. So that definitely resonates with me.
It's a super important topic for us freelancers, right? Like having your daily energy at maximum, that's one thing I'm always trying to tweak, it's and the older I get, I think the more important it is.
Oh, I could not agree more. And that's
by the way, the summer season, I just want to reflect on that and also ask you, because the summer season here in Europe is really slow. We were trying to organize some events across Europe, and we're reaching out to people in co-working places, whatever. And the response rate, I got replies in 3 weeks, after vacation or whatever. So I don't know how in the US, but here in Europe, the difference between the summer months, and the September is really huge.
Yeah,
At least in the parts of the economy where I work.
I think it is definitely different in Europe. I think it to a certain extent happens in the US, but in the US we just pretend that you're supposed to work 24/7 all the time. And don't take off that really nice chunk of time in the summer that I think Europeans dedicate this really nice piece of time in the summer to have an actual vacation. I think a lot of Americans take summer vacations for sure. And I think work slows down, especially because I think a lot of people's kids are out of school. But we don't acknowledge it as much, and we don't do it as intentionally, I think, as Europeans do, but it definitely happens. Before we get too far, I want to make sure that we get you to introduce yourself too, so that everyone knows who you are and what you do. So if you could just tell us, give us the answers to our 3 questions that we ask everyone, which is who are you, what do you do, and why do you do it?
All right. So you want it super short or extensive?
You could take it wherever you want to take it, because I think you wear multiple hats and you've been doing this for a long time. So tell us whatever version of the story you want.
I try to keep it short. so that we have space for more interesting topics. And well, I'm a business consultant, so I work with clients, mostly business owners. That's my core expertise, I would say. But I also work with freelancers. I'm supporting freelancers, and I had a really interesting journey in this regard, I believe, because I went freelance like 25 years ago. I was heading to Spain, hitchhiking all over the Europe. I loved hitchhiking at the time, and I went to Spain to do some seasonal labor, whatever. But it was late 1990s, and I knew some coding, and I found a gig actually as an independent freelance contractor for a company that was trying to produce an internet portal, a website, large website. So I started freelancing by accident, actually. I'm from an entrepreneurial family, but I never wanted to be an entrepreneur because I saw my parents hustling all the time, and I said to myself, oh, this is definitely not a life for me, like, because they are working all days, weekends, whatever. So I had this silly promise to myself, that I would never be a business person, that I would do some artistic work, whatever. I love books and writing and stuff. And by the time, of course, I didn't know much about freelancing. I was studying business school, so it was also, company focused. And so I happened to be a freelancer accidentally. I worked on a project for 2 years. I totally burned out at 22 or something like that. So I had to take a year off, like working in a winery near Vienna. That really cleared my head, I have to say. And then when I came back to, doing web development work, I started getting questions from other freelancers who saw that I was, active internationally and doing pretty well. So I was doing one-on-one sessions. I started to do more of this consulting stuff. And then I started also to develop small websites, supporting my freelance friends. These websites were really very successful. So they were getting a lot of inquiries, from new clients and whatever. And they actually made me to think up a plan. I developed it when I was in 2004 in Mexico on a long trip. There were like long rides on buses. When you are in Mexico, you go from one side to one side and for one day. So you have a lot of time to think. And I was thinking, well, I could basically turn these small websites into a larger project, which I did. I started the Czech freelance community in 2005. It was a one-man show at the beginning, but eventually it grew in one of the largest freelance communities in Europe. We are currently supporting, I would say, like 250,000 freelancers who run their business. So we do newsletter, we do podcasts, we publish blog, we have an open directory of freelancers where anyone can look up the freelancer. All these contacts are available there, so there is no filter basically. And we also started to do courses for freelancers that was given. We also started the first European think tank for freelancers, where we met and shared experience, know-how, and so on. And then I was approached by several publishers that whether I would like to write a book. I didn't want that much. I was still waiting for someone to write it in Czech. But then I found a perfect publisher, like an ideal publisher. I would say they only publish 12 books a year. It's the publishing house is called Jan Melville Publishing. And they are really like old-fashioned publishers that really invest time in their authors, and they develop their idea into a like really useful and complex book. So I wrote the Czech one. The Czech book was really long, like it's longer than the one you have. You have this one from HarperCollins. The Czech one was like twice as long. It was like 760 pages, and we thought that it wouldn't sell really well because it was that long. It was niche, but it actually turned out into a huge bestseller for the publishing house. And that gave us the idea that we can, make a English translation, like make it a bit more condensed. I just do a big edit for the book. And then the book was picked by HarperCollins, and here we are, talking about it, or these topics in there. But actually, the English edition was also quite important for me as a professional in some other aspects, because I studied more the data and researched more the European freelance economy. And I realized, it was like back in 2018, 2019, that actually the Czech freelance economy that I was focused on most of the time before is quite advanced already, on par with the Netherlands or UK. There is plenty of projects for freelancers, trainings, business coaches like you are, for example, so plenty of resources. But there are other countries in Europe where the support is not as extensive, So I got this idea that we will just use the Czech community platform as a sort of template and create a European platform. So I started freelancing.eu, which is currently our second leg, and this is a project that's basically trying to support European freelancers. It also surprised me in so many ways, because in the beginning, I thought that it would be for Europeans, like I was not thinking about people outside of Europe. But then we start doing some events, and we also started to send out newsletter and so on. And I realized that most of the people that sign up to these events or sign up to newsletters are actually from the US, Canada, Australia, Africa, Asia. And I was wondering, why are all these people interested in some European project, And I talked to some of them and realized that they want to see the European perspective, because the US perspective on freelancing is pretty well known. It's the best covered one, with blogs, with books, with everything. But people were interested in how Europeans see it. It's not a huge difference. There are some differences, I would say. We can talk about it if you want. But in general, I realized that this work is much more global than I'd originally thought. So right now I'm, working on this freelancing.eu project. We are starting to do in-person meetings all over Europe. That's the plan. We want to, go from the COVID mode where it was all online into in-person. And we would like to organize meetings for freelancers all over Europe. So if anyone from Europe is listening and you are running, a co-working center, co-working place, you can reach out to me, and we can have a joint venture meetup there if you want to attract local and international freelancers. So this is all in a nutshell. I was not talking that much about my consulting practice, because I work with more with business owners that also own companies. But since you are so much focused on freelancers, this is my freelance journey, from a really young guy coding websites in Spain in late 1990s before the dot-com bubble burst, to this, guy focused on, supporting freelancers internationally and having conversations with people like you. By the way, I love your work. I told you already, but I have to put this on record. Like we are actually for our newsletter, we are researching, quality sources in the whole world, for freelancers, and you are definitely among the top ones. So great work, and thank you for having me on my podcast. I talk too much.
Thank you for being here. I love your work. I think the reason why we love each other's work is because we have a similar viewpoint about the power of being a freelancer, and the importance of freelancers supporting each other. I could not be more thrilled that you were here. And there's so many things that I want to dig in on, both from your book and from some things that you just said. I wonder if we want to just start by talking about, let's start with the difference between European freelancers. And I don't know if we want to juxtapose them with, I don't know if we have to juxtapose them with anyone, but like, tell us what you see as like, what's the difference about European freelancers versus other freelancers. And something you said before we hit record that I'm particularly curious about is you said European freelancers don't have to hustle. And I'm curious about tell us more about that, because I think
No,
hustling.
I phrased it different. I said they don't have to hustle that much, you know.
Okay, well,
And
tell
this
us.
was basically related to healthcare issue, basically, you know, because in the US you don't have the universal healthcare that is broadly available to all citizens, you know. And when I was writing the Freelance Way, I was discussing these topics with several US freelancers, and I was also researching the pricing of the health insurance, and I realized that there is a huge gap between what Europeans usually pay for their health or social insurance and what Americans in some more risky groups or risk groups or some areas have to pay for covering the basis, right? So in general, I have to say I don't like generalizing too much about freelancing. So this was just basically a remark. You know, I wouldn't take that generalization too far, but I would say that in the European context, I quite often meet people who have preference in what they love to do as freelancers. For example, doing some low-paid expert work over some really well-paid that would cover them, you know, financially, because they have this sort of preference for long term, and they realize that they could be earning way much more if they would be doing some commercial gigs or some work that would be a bit more boring for them, but they have this preference. And since they have this universal insurance, you know, they know that if they fall sick, that they can have that covered somehow, you know. It's not perfect. We saw it during COVID, for example, that in some countries, you know, for example, freelancers who were registered as limited companies could not reach to, you know, to get the government benefits, you know, for the self-employed. So it has certain problems, but in general, in many countries, the system works pretty well, and it gives people a little bit more laid-back attitude to work. You know, I see that with US freelancers that they are in general also just a generalization. It's definitely not about the individual cases, but they're more business oriented. You know, they realize that if they earn more, that they are better covered against risks. You know, and this mindset basically has a huge influence in many areas. And one of them is definitely pricing, you know, because in Europe, I often, when I consult clients, you know, I often see that they hesitate to set their price above a certain level because they feel or they think that it would look greedy, you know, that it would look like sort of inappropriate. And I see that people in the US have much less problems with this, you know, like there are stars, there are celebrities in almost every field, you know. Sometimes these are people that my clients hired, you know, so I saw the contracts, you know, I know a little bit about how expensive these services of these top-notch experts can be, and they definitely don't hesitate to ask a couple of thousand euros or dollars per hour of work, you know, because they know that they're that good, and they have this mindset that they are creating profit not out of greed, but to create reserves that would sustain them over a period where they may have issues in their life, you know, health issues or personal issues, or they may have some legal troubles, you know. US is also quite specific in this regard, that you may be sued quite easily by anyone, right? Like it's not that easy in some countries in Europe, you know. The legal system works differently in some parts. So this is another area, you know. So in general I see that American freelancers, they are less hesitant, you know, to be really ambitious in the pricing and in you know in reaching for better clients, you know, in creating more ambitious deals, you know. And part of what we do is actually trying to change that. We are sharing the US sources, you know, showing these examples to European freelancers so that they can experiment, you know, and you know, get used to the idea that you can be really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I mean,
it's less common in Europe.
there's so many things there. There's like the difference between the way that this like lack of a little bit of a social safety net, as we would refer to it in the US, the lack of that in the US sort of like forces freelancers to hustle a little bit harder, right? So thinking about having
a
this,
little bit,
building their own safety net to a certain extent.
Yeah, exactly.
Being
and self-reliant in a way,
and I think the mindset shift there around doing European freelancers, maybe, and again, I'm totally with you, like we're generalizing here, but I love thinking about it as a mindset, because for European freelancers, having a little bit more freedom to maybe do things that they love, that they feel like they're charging, that they can charge they have to charge less money for, versus maybe a little bit more of a mindset where I'm not doing I'm maybe putting what I love a little bit more on the back burner and focusing a little bit more on what is going to make me the most amount of money. Which I think the combination of those two mindsets is like where the sweet spot is, where you're like, I can really think about doing what I love is 100% important, and as equally important as making really good money for what I love and what I'm good at. And that's where I think if the freelancers who find that that like nexus between those two things are the ones that are, I think, A, charging the highest rates, and B, like really enjoying what they do. Because I think once you find something that is really what you love, you can hone in on it a way where you are what I refer to as like a big fish in a small pond, where you have that very specific area of expertise and you're able to charge the highest rates for it. Now, again, that's a journey of a lifetime. I think that it also, like, I think changes, like you and I were
it's
saying,
a super
over time.
important idea. I agree that it's ideal if you combine the two, but the thing is that the journey to this point is definitely not straightforward. You know, so it takes a lot of trial and error. I think in general, freelancers are better off if they know about you know, more options, you know, how to approach some career choices. So I'm definitely not saying that one is better than the other one, you know. I'm just saying that you know, having, you know, in general, it's also one of the ideas covered in my book, you know. I see a very common problem among freelancers who are experts, you know, and that problem lies in that foremostly we are experts, you know, we love our profession, you know. If you do some really interesting profession, you fell in love with it, you like, I don't know, developing websites or coaching clients, whatever. But actually quite few professions are directly related to entrepreneurship, you know. So a freelancer is both an expert, you have to be getting better in what you do. I don't know, if you are eye surgeon, you have to be great, you know, doctor, whatever. If you are copywriter, you have to be getting better at writing better text. If you are a journalist, whatever, graphic designer. So we tend to love our profession and develop this side of things, you know. But what I see as a broad and almost a general problem is that quite often freelancers neglect the business side of things, that they don't realize that there is this whole area of business strategy, pricing, business negotiations, personal marketing, you may say personal branding, whatever. The problem I often see is that they develop one side and they neglect the other one, So my mission with the book and with what we do is actually help freelancers to develop the entrepreneurial side. And it's a journey, exactly as you said, it's not about just charging more. It's a nonsense, because when you charge more, what do you do? I mean, the moment you charge more to the clients, the expectations go sky roof, sky high, if you charge 2 times, 3 times more, they have so much higher expectations about the professionalism of overall work, about the delivery, about reliability, about the way you communicate with them, So, and you can never foresee where these expectations will go, because you will probably go with the high price to go into a new higher segment of your clients. And these will be different people that you dealt with before. They will think differently. They will have different way of telling you things. They will be perhaps using a different language as well, a little bit. In explaining themselves and about whatever. So, and this is something that we cannot foresee. You cannot foresee what will be your clientele if you charge 5 times as much as you do now. You can't. So you have to go there, trial and error, and in every step do exactly as you said. Make sure that you actually still love the work, that you actually still not only charge more, but doing something that is disappointing in some way. So it's a search. It's a long search for your niche, for your sweet spot, as you said. That's a super important point that you made.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think it is there is no, like we were saying before we hit record, there's no formula. You have, it's all about trial and error. It's all about, you have to figure out what works for you. And I think you're exactly right. And which is again why I think we think about this stuff in very much the same way, where that is exactly why I talk so much about boss mindset, is because I see so many freelancers who do not consider themselves a business because they are one person. And so part of my mission is every freelancer is a business. And the more you start thinking about yourself as a business, the more you start to shift some of those things internally for yourself. Because I think you're absolutely right. It's sort of like a ladder effect of pricing and then expectations. And so the more you're raising your game in terms of the way you're approaching your business as a business, in terms of the way you're communicating with people, in terms of the way you're presenting your work to people, all of those things that go into that allow you to raise your prices, and raising your prices then raises your expectations. And you're exactly right. I think one of the things that I think we've all fall prey to, but maybe even more so in the US, is we're a lot of times just chasing the dollar. So we're chasing technically your earning power as a freelancer, the sky's the limit. You can earn, again, with that ladder effect and with making sure that you're meeting the expectations of your clients. The sky's the limit on how much money you can earn, but all of that is relative to how much time you want to be putting in, and the types of people that you want to be working with, and the type of work that you're doing, and do you actually love it? And so sometimes I see people that climb that ladder and get further up to the top where they're like, I'm charging a ton of money for this and I hate working with these people. And so I need to just go down a couple of notches and start over. So I think you're absolutely right. There's no right way to do it. And there's no way that someone can just come. You can't go to a course or a 90-minute workshop and come out on the other side and be like, great, I've figured it out. It is the journey of a lifetime, and you're constantly readjusting it as you go.
Yeah, I think there's also one interesting point there. As you said, chasing the dollar, I think an interesting approach is that not think too much about the money itself, like I personally have a more technical approach, like I know that I'm already pretty busy and that I have only a certain amount of available time, and I'm trying to match the price I'm setting to the amount of time I have, So for me, it's more a technical approach or technical system. I know that by doing this, I may become way too expensive for some people, but I may always, find some time for, creating a sort of affordable service, for like one-off consultation or do some pro bono work, which I do. Most of it is related to our community work. So I may still find, really interesting projects to work on, but I never thought of it as, trying to sell my time to highest bidder. I'm just trying to be proactive in terms of, charging more before I'm already overworked. I'm trying to raise the price in order to make more time for myself, for my family, So chasing the dollar is actually a way to have more time for doing things I love, I think it's interesting to look at it also this way, it's not about how much I can earn or how much I will earn, but if I don't alter the pricing soon enough, the clients will flood me with work. I will be overworked, I will be overstretched, I will not be happy about what I do, and very often, like if we are honest to ourselves, if we hate doing something, it's not sometimes that much about the people we work with or the client or the projects we work on, but it's because we are, overworked. We work 12 hours a day, sometimes on the weekends, and then suddenly you find yourself in a situation where you don't like that work that much anymore because you are just too stretched. My experience is that sometimes, of course, I bump into people who I definitely don't want to be my clients, and I have a system that is also described in detail in the Freelance Way, how to filter out these people very reliably. So I almost never work with them. There are red flags, there are, like sort of questions you might ask, part of the filtering is in pricing, the business conditions I have, like for the clients. But in general, I find out that if I work less, if I make more free time, if I follow my daily regimen, taking enough sun, healthy food, exercise and everything, I actually love doing things that would be boring for people who are stretched, because I have time for them. I have time to think about them. I have time to deliver extra value to clients. I always love to have, these complex relationships with people I work with. It's not only about delivering, some report. This is silly. I mean, like if you want to really create value, that value often lies for the client in things that are not that straightforward, like so that's why when I work with clients on the long term, we also discuss things like how they invest, how they take care of themselves, how their daily routine is set up, because they see that I have it somehow set up well and they want to be inspired, and it's part of the package, And that's why I also write in a book. It's a quote by a great consultant I met, that on a certain level, as a consultant, you don't only sell your time to the client, you also sell the relationship in a way.
Yes.
That you personally will take care of their maximum benefit from your collaboration, And this sort of, looking at pricing makes the work way less focused on the actual dollar even though you are raising it in order to make time, and focus more on enjoying the whole experience. Does it make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And I love that way of looking at it so much because the the it is, like you just said, it is about the price. But the price is more of a mechanism for using that as a leverage point to craft what your entire business looks like and who your clientele
Yeah,
is and how you're spending your time. So you're using your price as like your main sort of like let off valve. Like you close it when you raise it up
exactly,
when you're starting to get
precisely.
too much.
And this mechanism
Yeah.
is like it's so important that I believe that every freelancer should master it.
Yes.
Super important.
And it
Of course,
is
there are niches. I mean, I'm not talking about platform freelancers. I'm not talking about creative economy. We are more talking about full-time freelancers,
yeah.
experts in a way, who are selling their expertise on the free market. That's what I'm talking about mainly here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's I mean, I could not agree more. I think it is also something that you said, if you let it get away from you, like you have to be very vigilant about it. You have to be always watching it, because if you let it get away from you, you can look back and be like, oh, I have way too much work and I'm charging way too little money for it. And if
Mm-hmm.
you had been adjusting that a little bit, you talk a lot about this in the book,
Yeah.
about not having like a cliff where you're raising your price, where you're like, oh no, now I have
Mm-hmm.
to double my price. But you're just like being conscious of it and raising it over time in relation to all these other things, which I think fundamentally are much more important than the money. But the money
Mm-hmm.
is a leverage point to make sure that the time, the flexibility, the type of work, the type of people that you're working with, all of those things are related to the amount of money that you're charging.
Also, one important thing that I forgot. If you charge more and if you create a larger financial reserve, this will also give you a much greater freedom to fine tune your filter who to work with. So it's much easier, to let some opportunities just go by and recommend somebody else, who is more, appropriate for the client. So you are then much more comfortable in not hustling that much and waiting for the right opportunity where you know that the client needs exactly someone like you, where you can deliver much greater value than probably some other people they work with. And that also enables you, to actually set the price even higher later, because you are delivering consistently greater value for the clients. So uh having this leisure for waiting for the proper good clients, uh premium clients, if you want, whatever, is also enabled by charging more, because you have larger reserve. And as everyone knows who is building the reserve over the long term, it's a huge difference if you have reserve for 1 month of your expenditures or reserve for 5 years.
Yeah.
That creates a completely different, approach to picking up work. So
Yeah.
that's also a huge game changer. I forgot to mention that.
No, I think that is exactly right. I think I just think it's not like, it's definitely aligned to all the ways that I think about pricing and about money and about worth and all the other things, but I don't know that that's like crystallized for me until now in the way that you said it, where it's just like your price is about so much more than the money, because it is, like we said, it's just this leverage point that gives you access to so many different things. And it's something, like you said, it is a skill set, going back to what we said about freelancers thinking about themselves as businesses and this like entrepreneurial mindset. That is one of the biggest things that I think people don't know how to do. It is a skill set, being able to just watch your demand, watch how you are interacting with your business, watch the types of clients and projects that you're getting, and knowing how to adjust your price accordingly and being super vigilant about that is a skill set that I don't think a lot of
Yeah.
people have.
And I have to say that I totally agree. And that what doesn't make it easier is that it's actually hard to find relevant information about pricing, because there's so many different opinions actually. One thing that really strikes me, it's that I often read, for example, expert opinions that for example, charging your work by the hour, it doesn't make sense because you have to, I don't know, sell value, whatever, and then you go into these surveys and you actually see that charging by the hour or by the man day is totally predominant in the market. Like it's the number one method to price freelance work. In most surveys I've seen. There was one German one. It's not statistically representative because it was done with a selection of the members of it was done by Freelance Map. And I think that the people who charge by the hour or by the man day or by the day, whatever, combined was something like 85%. And these people, if you look at the survey, they are not charging a little. I mean, like they are pretty well off, in terms of general comparison, in terms of freelancing. And also another thing is that you have certain professions where it is completely common to charge by the hour. And if I talk to these people, they said like, this is simply the best method that works for me, So I don't say that hourly rate or I don't know, a fixed rate or a job rate is the best one, I just say that it's pretty complicated for people to get a grasp of pricing because they're often told that something is useless. And I always try to remind when I write about freelancing, when I discuss freelancing, like on this opportunity, that we have to realize that freelancers work in hundreds of industries and thousands of professions. And many of these, they have like habitual way of doing things, of pricing things. And I think that the number one responsibility for a freelancer is basically to master the methods that are used in your profession, because clients will be expecting that you know them, right? Yes. That you master them in a way. And only after you know how they work and where are their limits, try to add some extra stuff, advanced pricing, value-based, whatever you want, like just you can add more arsenal to your pricing warfare or whatever. And I think this is a really serious problem for many beginners because they often overlook the basic methods of pricing as sort of obsolete or not, fancy enough, and they go into more complex stuff, which doesn't work because it requires more complex knowledge sometimes, For example, if you do variant pricing, like you offer a client 3 variants, like a budget one, a standard one, and a premium superb one, like, well, it's a great method, but to use it, you actually have to know something about pricing and have some prior experience with using some more simple methods, right?
Yeah.
So I would always say that, like, whenever you are trying to study pricing, think about 2 things. Freelancing is hugely complex, hundreds of industries, thousands of professions. It's always great to talk to people directly in your profession, like 5 or 10 colleagues, exchange ideas. How exactly you price that client and why are you using this silly method or that proposal or whatever? What's the reasoning behind it, And that way we learn. That hourly rate is not for me. Okay, I will try something else, and you actually find out what works for you. It's the system we were talking about, trial and error, but it's more rooted in practice, not in some, nonchalant generalization about it. Charging by the hour is silly because, for example, in my case, it's definitely not silly. It's the best method I work with. And I know plenty of consultants who have similar opinion, and I don't say that anything else is bad. I just say, well, this is how it works for me. And I know the reasons. I don't have to be told, this or that.
Well, and I think, I mean, I cannot agree more. I think that and that just goes back to, again, like looking at yourself like a business means that you know how you're justifying your price, you know why you're charging like that. You're not taking something off the shelf that some business guru or someone else said this is the way you should do it. And that is also my number one piece of advice too around pricing. I'm like, go talk to five other people that do the same thing you do. Like, you're not, there's no
Very
way
important.
there's no
Super
way you're
important.
going to know, unless, especially if you're just starting off. That is the only way you're going to be able to decide, is if you're talking to other people that do what you do, or other people who hire people that do what you do. Because it's nice to be able to look at it from both sides.
Most of the things is not written about.
Yeah.
People, there are nuances, like reasonings behind things that no one takes time to write about, like always the real world is way more complex than, the simplified version in a blog piece, right? Yep. So why we have to talk to these people is because that's the only way, besides practice, how to find out how in the complex market reality things sometimes work. And they tell you, I was having this client, and there was this problem, and this is precisely why I have this clause in the contract, because that was the situation, I want to prevent it. And then you know that it was caused by an accident, by some, by bumping into some, guy who was trying not to pay or whatever.
Yep. I mean, I think that's a great place to leave it. Obviously, we could talk for many, many hours about all of the amazing things that are in your book. And I will plug that there's a chapter in your book specifically about pricing. There's a couple other chapters in here that touch on pricing. It is definitely the most comprehensive overview of pricing I have ever read for freelancers. So I cannot recommend reading, read the whole book, because it is wonderful. But that chapter in particular, I think it's hard to talk about pricing without simplifying it into these like formulas or rules or best practices, when ultimately you just need to know the menu of options and then find the one that works best in your industry and for your business model. And that is something that is going to be customized to both your industry, what you do, and who you are as a business.
Second thing that is related to the very tightly, and we don't have the time for that, but we can discuss it some other time, is business negotiations. I think that people totally underestimate how important it is to learn to negotiate. It's actually probably the only part of the freelance business where I would recommend to read at least several books.
Yes, you referenced some of my favorites in there.
Yeah, it's so, because it's so hard. I mean, if you don't read them, or if you don't talk to experienced negotiators, you then have to learn by making mistakes. And in business negotiations, mistakes are really expensive sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really, I don't say it lightly. I know that recommending reading, half a dozen book, it doesn't sound good, but I know from experience that it helps people a lot, especially if they are not born negotiators who are somehow, predisposed to be great in some area of negotiating. So that would be my second favorite subject, in not only about, and this is also quite a common problem. People are quite aware that they have to negotiate about new deals, right? But how about the old deals? I mean, we have different price, we are different people after several years because we are working on ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And this creates a need to renegotiate the ongoing collaborations, sometimes to put them on a completely new level, saying to the client, we are doing something, but I'm already doing something quite different. And I would like to, to have you on the same page, perhaps I can do something else for you. Let's discuss that, So I always think that it's great to have a moment, like when you send an invoice or, to look at the present collaborations and say, well, what can I do to upsell this client or negotiate in order to align the collaboration with what I want to do at this moment. I think freelancers don't often do that. They just have this habitual way of going on for years, having the same price with the same client. It's so comfortable. It's so comfortable. And often when we lose money, it's in this area, because these people, they know us, they know the value we are creating, they trust us, they know that we are serious professional in what we do, and they would be willing to discuss to giving us greater amount of the value we're creating if we negotiate enough. And I always say, someone has to fight for your side of the deal. People don't do that. We are, as freelancers, we are so much client oriented. We want to do the best for the client. Like we very often provide much better service than a company does, with all the downsides of freelance work, of course, that it's not ideal, it's not perfect world, it's not the rose garden, but one of the downsides is that we then sort of neglect, our part of the deal. So that would be my closing idea.
I think that is really good advice, and I cannot agree more that it is an area that often gets overlooked. And like I said, you reference a lot of my favorite books in your book about negotiations.
Which one did you like most about negotiations?
My favorite one is Never Split the Difference.
All right, that's a good one.
Yeah,
it's a bit hard on things.
It's intense. Yeah,
it's I know that in the European context, in some cases it's a bit too hard. Like we like a different way of approaching things. So I prefer Seth Freeman. The Art of Negotiating the Best Deal from the great courses, because it's so mild. It's more on finding the consensus. Like Voss is really the hard one. He was the FBI negotiator, so he had these SWAT teams behind him. Like that's a position that you will never find yourself in as a freelancer. Having a $1 billion company behind you, or a SWAT team, with snipers. So I think we have to master softer ways, of doing fighting for our thing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely
but
right.
I agree. It's a great that you recommend it, because any reading on negotiations, there are even some crazy stuff. If we can go on more for a minute.
Yeah.
The most ambitious book I've read on negotiations is probably not the Voss one, Never Split the Difference, but it's Split the Pie by Neri Nalabov. He's a sort of professor, academic in terms of negotiations, and he also has a business experience. And this guy is so ambitious that he tells that no matter if you are a freelancer and on the other side is a $1 billion company client, that the new value that is created by the business should be split in half.
Ooh, I like that.
So for example, that's this idea. I don't like. So imagine you by your work, you create, I don't know, 5 million in new revenue or new profit for your client, and his idea, simplified because it's a lot of math there, is that you should be aiming for half of it. and so this is really ambitious. So there are many, really, I would say, like, very opinionated books on negotiating, but I love them all. It's so important to discuss this topic.
It really is. I think it is something that often gets overlooked. And feeds back in everything we've said too, about just like looking at yourself like a business, having an entrepreneurial mindset. I cannot thank you enough for talking to us. I hope that we can have you back again soon, because there are many, many other topics I would love to discuss with you. And before we let you go, tell us where we can find you.
All right, you can just Google me. It's pretty easy. And we run this freelancing.eu project where you can subscribe to a newsletter. This is surging in subscribers recently. So I'm writing a exclusive content for each issue. If people are interested in what I write currently, these are like basically short opinion pieces or essays. And we are also starting in-person meetups for freelancers all over Europe, also to be found on in this newsletter. And well, last but not least, I would like to mention a challenge that is also an invitation for you if you ever come to Europe and would be willing to do an in-person interview. I would love to do that. That would be great. But it's also meant for people who are, like internationals and would be willing to come to Ostrava, where I live in Czech Republic, by plane, whatever. That I'm willing to record longer interviews with wide array of freelancers. So if you are listening to this, and you are adventurous and a traveler, you want to travel to Europe, you will find me in Ostrava.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's a silly idea. I know, like no people are coming yet, but I know if I spread this idea a little bit, like it will start.
Hey, I'm gonna put it on my travel radar. The Czech Republic has been on my list of places to visit for quite some time, so I need just like the tiniest nudge to write it off as a business expense, and I'm there.
You definitely can.
Oh, I'm dead serious, Robert.
We are
going to make it happen
for sure.
Well, thank you so much again, and we'll put all the links to all of your things in the show notes, and hopefully we will see you back again sometime real soon.
It will be my pleasure, Sarah. I admire your work. Keep it coming, keep it growing. You're perfect in what you do.
Thank you so much.
Great articles. We've been sharing them for years. So, so having this opportunity to talking to you finally in person, my pleasure.
That means so much to me.